What's up, everybody? Welcome to the channel. OG here, and we are still on our road to FC26. So in a way, this is episode 4, but in a way it's not, because I want to prepare you for life without AI-assisted defense. And because defense has changed, the way you attack has also changed. So we are going to go over both of those in a film breakdown session. This is one of the biggest ways that I prepare and that I help myself to improve game after game, year after year, and it has worked tremendously. So I want to pass it on to you so that you can start getting the most out of watching back your games and pinpointing areas that you can improve on. So let's get into it. The biggest thing that has changed: no more AI assistance. When the opponent's coming at you, you now have your second man press by double tapping R1 and holding it on the second tap. And what will happen is the two nearest defenders, not the player you're controlling, but the two nearest defenders outside of that, will sprint over and mark the two nearest attackers outside of the player with the ball. Now, when it comes to making a tackle, blocking a shot, anything like that, you now have to do that yourself. There is no more controlling your midfielder or controlling a defender that's not involved in potentially making the tackle or blocking the shot and just holding R1 or just letting your AI do the dirty work. You have to get in there and make the interception, make the tackle, block the shot yourself. Now, as you know, you can still hold R1 and the AI will still bring a defender over to close down space, but that is the extent of it. No longer will you hold R1 and that defender will do the defensive work, such as making the tackle. So the big question is, how can you properly defend now and prevent your opponent from getting chances on goal and potentially scoring goals? And to answer that question, we are going to move over to our attack, because we know how hard it is to defend for us, therefore it must be that hard for our opponents. So when we are attacking and looking for the best way to create chances and, more importantly, score goals, we have to ask ourselves, what is the hardest for us to defend? What is the most uncomfortable when the opponent has the ball and is coming at us? And the answer to that is when they have us 1v1 around the goal. We do not like being 1v1 because it is so hard to defend now, right? And we don't want to give up goals. Therefore, how do we get our opponent in that position where we can have them 1v1 with one of our attackers so we can try to beat them and score a goal? Which is obviously going to be difficult when many players are sitting back, parking the bus, because it is so hard to defend one-on-one. They're trying not to get themselves in that situation. They want to try to keep as many players around the ball so that even if they get beat, you eventually run into one of their defenders and they can attack. So you need to spread your offense out. Pass the ball constantly. Look to take the ball outside to pull the defenders out and then move to the middle. Because when defenders come out, you then move the ball to the middle, and we all know the ball moves faster than the man. We learned that as players when we were young. And we move the ball back to the middle. Now these defenders are spread out, and we can attack the gaps and create a chance and hopefully score a goal. So then switching back to the defensive side, what do we do to prevent our opponents from creating and scoring chances? We stay compact. We do not allow the opponent to get us 1v1 or in vulnerable positions where they can get chances and potentially score goals. You see how it connects there? So now we just have to work on the principles of each side. As you see, I gave up a goal in the background, and it is because I wasn't tightly marked. This wasn't a situation where I was outnumbered. You see I have plenty of numbers back, but off the throw-in, I wasn't tight enough marked. I should have switched to the unmarked player after the throw-in. Once I saw that I wasn't going to be able to get to the player with the ball and close him down, I should have switched to his most dangerous passing option, so I could have either intercepted or immediately stuck in a tackle on the player that eventually scored a goal. But I learned from that, and now going forward, I will make sure to close down any open attacker, to make sure that I have numbers there to switch to the defenders that I need to mark those players. So I did good by having the numbers there, right? And some of it was done for me because it was off of a throw-in, so my defenders automatically reset. But it is good to know you have to not only have the numbers, but be quick with your player switching and mark the open players, which you have to do constantly because you know the attackers are going to constantly be moving. So then, again, we switch to the attacking side. What's the hardest thing to do defensively, outside of what we've already talked about, is marking a constantly moving offense. That's why I said earlier, you have to constantly be passing. And as you're passing, you're also moving. You're triggering runs as you're moving the ball around, pulling the defenders out, and then working it in, right? You want to pull them away from where you want the ball to go, which is towards the goal. That's where you score. So you want to pull them away from goal, constantly passing and moving as you're doing this, and eventually you'll find that opening, create a chance, and hopefully score a goal. Now, I know this is easier said than done for many of us, but the whole point is you work on it until it isn't easier said than done. You work on it until it is automatic, and you are making stops defensively all the time, and you are passing and moving the ball until you create and score goals all the time. That is the name of the game. So then where do you start as far as making improvements defensively and offensively? Well, let's start on the defensive side of the ball, and let's start in the most vulnerable situation, which is when you are one-on-one with the attacker. And we must ask, why is this so difficult now? The reason is because previously you had the AI assisting you. Many times, like I said, players wouldn't even control the defender that was doing the hardest part, which is winning the ball back. Now, you have to win the ball yourself. Not only that, but you also had the ability to press X, and the player would essentially do a shoulder charge or a tackle and cover several feet of ground. You wouldn't have to be near the player or in a good position to make the tackle. Now, if you try a shoulder charge and you aren't in perfect positioning, the attacker will keep the ball and you will just bounce off of them. So what do you have to do to win the ball back? What do you have to do to get in perfect positioning? You have to anticipate where your opponent is going with the ball, and you have to be patient. If you just try to dive in, they will dribble right around you. If you just try to chase after the ball, you will pull your defenders all out of position, and they will pass around you or even continue to dribble around you. So you have to have that patience, anticipate where they're going. You can even put some fake lunges in, right? You're continuing to jockey, and then you fake like you're committing to a tackle just to kind of get them to nudge left or right or wherever they're trying to go, and then you can pounce on them when they're least expecting it. Now, ideally, you don't want to be in one-on-one situations. You want to have numbers behind the ball. As you see me win the ball back here, I had plenty of defenders, all of them in good positioning, and I wasn't pulling them all over the place. I was keeping them in that good positioning. So I didn't say, oh, I have a lot of numbers back, I'm just going to start diving at the ball and eventually win it. I stayed patient, kept my defenders where they were at until I had a good opportunity to pounce and steal the ball. When you start pulling defenders out of position, when you start running around like crazy with no tactical awareness, you leave openings for your opponent to pass or dribble through and potentially score goals. So last but not least, we move back to the attack and looking into how we increase our goal scoring chances and ultimately how many goals we score. And the answer to this starts with the way we defend, because that is how our opponent is most likely going to defend. We know that our opponent, at the worst, is going to be diving in all over the place, looking to try to win the ball as quickly as they can, or they're going to be sitting back with a park the bus defensive method and being patient, not diving in, waiting for opportune chances to tackle the ball. So, as we said earlier, we beat this by spreading out our offense, constantly passing and moving, constantly working to pull the defense out of shape, pull them away from the goal, right? And we do this by working the ball outside and then working it back into the middle once we spread out the defense. Now that we've created gaps to work through, we find the opening, we shoot the ball, and we score a goal. You see how it all connects. You see how you can work game after game at improving by pinpointing particular areas, general areas, all of the above that you can get better at. Now, the best way I like to do this is I'm never happy. To summarize the legendary Lombardi quote, who is an American football coach, you aim for perfection, knowing that no one's perfect, but along the way you will reach greatness. And that is exactly the mentality we take. Now, if you follow this, I guarantee your full potential will be reached. You will no longer be stuck in that same division with that same amount of champs wins that you've been getting year after year with very slight to no variations. You will actually improve. You will see it game after game, champs after champs, season after season, and year after year. Now, these improvements don't happen overnight, but let's get to work now. And by the time FC26 comes out, you will have already vastly improved, and you will keep on improving as long as you keep this training method going. So, as always, keep grinding, keep having fun. I'll see you on the next one. Peace.